Journey to Lemora, Chapter 24. Deceptions. I dreamt again. I saw young Lucien running through the forest with a large leather sack on his back. He kept looking over his shoulder, as if to be sure he wasn't being followed. A rustle overhead alarmed him, and he ducked down. A hawk made of brambles and orange blooms swooped down, landing on Lucien's backpack. Relief spread over his face. "Norleth Nanir, Dorche," he said affectionately, stroking the forest familiar's beak. The hawk screeched in objection, but eventually it flew back into the sky. Lucien continued on alone. The world faded into black, but the vision continued. Now, instead of following Lucien, I saw Prince Kaylan. He was shouting at a mysterious young man who was tall, lean, and muscular. This boy had mid-length, thick brown hair that was parted on either side of a ratty orange headband, and had a light stubble on his chin, giving him a roguish look. He smirked at his royal quarry. His bright blue eyes were alight with malice. Kaylan was standing there with his back turned to him, searching for the vagrant and shouting profanities in no particular direction. The rogue made his move, slipping behind Kaylan and bashing his head with a thick wooden boomerang with a loud crack. Kaylan staggered, but it wasn't enough to knock him out. "That's one thick skull you have there, mate," he laughed, and Kaylan lashed out at him with his black and silver sword. The young man dodged him easily, and he was light on his feet. They were standing on some sort of vessel, a ship with a mast and sails, but there was no water. The ship glided through the air, floating on the wind. The vessel rocked with turbulence, and lightning flashed, knocking them both off their feet. Kaylan regained his balance first and thrust his sword right into the rogue's chest. Except it wasn't his chest, just an empty shirt. The rogue had transformed himself into a bright tropical orange macaw, and flew away from Kaylan, whose swearing was drowned out by the clash of more lightning. I woke with another headache. I drank some water and rubbed my temples, but it lingered. I understood why I would dream about my brother, after discovering the truth about him. But why did I continue to dream of Kaylan? How was the Elorian prince and I connected? Despite my spirit magic training, the visions still didn't make any sense to me. Anu asked me to tell him and Lelian of the dreams about Kaylan, but they would not reveal any of their intentions. They hid the very existence of Lucien from me. I doubted they would tell me anything about Kaylan, so I had only one option. I had to ask Kaylan himself somehow, but the Fae guards were not going to let me near him willingly. I contemplated a plan at breakfast, careful to guard my thoughts from any spirit magic users, but nothing would work without help. Then I saw Shayla. I knew she wanted answers from Kaylan too, and she was sympathetic towards my brother. Maybe if I told her she would help. "Good morning, Shayla," I said with a smile. "So tolar, Catty," she greeted me with a slight bow. "Are you busy today? I could use your help with something," I whispered cautiously, checking for anyone in earshot. The coast was clear. "What do you need, friend?" Shayla asked as she peeled and took a bite of some fruit. "I want to talk to one of the prisoners. I had a vision of one of them, the prince," I whispered. At this, her violet eyes grew wide and a dark look crossed her face. "Lestan would never allow this," she replied hesitantly. "I know, but I can't shake this feeling that he's connected to me somehow. Ever since I became the guardian of the spirit key, I've had visions of both him and Lucien. I have to meet him. Maybe he knows something that could lead us to Lucien. I have to find him." Shayla paused for a moment before agreeing. "I will do it for you and for Lucien. Just promise me when you leave to find him, you take me with you," she said, and I took her hands in mine. "Please, I would love your help." Shayla would be instrumental in finding Lucien. She was a master wood magic user, tracker, and she knows him personally. I honestly didn't have much of a hope without her, so for her to volunteer was a victory in itself. I had so many questions for Kaylan. Why was he haunting my dreams? What did they need all the magic origins for? But mostly, I wanted to know if he knew where Lucien was. It couldn't be a coincidence that I dreamt of both of them, could it? Shayla and I waited until nightfall to attempt to meet the prisoners. There were more guards on patrol than before, so it was particularly tricky. Shayla turned herself into a tree, which I couldn't do, so I hid behind her when the guards patrolled close to us. I held my breath, my head spinning with anticipation. To my great relief, the guard didn't spot us. We crept slowly to the shallow cave, where I first saw the prisoners days ago. I was shocked to see the cage only had one limp body inside. He was slumped over, covered in filth, and smelled strongly from where we hid, yards away. There was only one guard yawning in front of the cage. I snuck close behind him. "Sleep," I commanded, channeling my spirit magic. The guard slumped effortlessly to the ground and let out a snore. I was thankful Lelian taught me the power of suggestion. The mind is more susceptible if it's already thinking of the same task you suggest. With this spell, you simply push them over the edge. The man sat still inside the cage. He was so filthy it was hard to tell which one was still here. I approached it cautiously, unsure if he was still alive. "Kaylan?" I asked quietly, and the man turned suddenly, gripping the barbed bars of his cell. He stared wide-eyed at me. You know me?" he gasped dryly. "Sort of. You attacked us in the mountains." "I am Catty, the guardian of spirit," I explained with my heart racing in my throat. Kaylan spit on the ground. "What do you want, guardian? To kill me? That would be a mercy," he muttered. "I wanted to ask you about a boy, Lucien. Do you know where he is?" I asked. "Never heard of him. Why would you ask me that? Certainly you have more pressing matters to ask about, like my father's plans for your precious temples. Your Phalarian friends aren't telling you anything, are they?" he scoffed. I glared at him. He was avoiding the question, so he must know something. "I've seen you before, in my visions. You and I are connected, and I want to know why. Why is it in my dreams I either see you or I see Lucien?" I asked, and he glowered at me between the vine bars. "Visions? You sound like Lady Spectre, the witch." "How should I know? Are all guardians this delusional?" he rasped through his gritted teeth. "You can't trust anything that come from this Ahalaris. Nador, Catty. This is a waste of time," Shayla said to me, checking over her shoulder. We started to walk away when... Wait! I know him. I know Lucien," Kaylan interjected desperately, his hands still gripped tightly to the bars. "He lies," Shayla hissed through her teeth. "How do you know him?" I asked, watching him shift uncomfortably in the cage. "He grew up here, right? In the Feywood? No Alorian willingly steps into these woods. A savage land full of barbaric people. There's only one known Alorian who's lived in the dark woods, and that must be him." I looked at Shayla, who was scowling. "Maybe he isn't lying after all," I said to her privately, using spirit magic. "He's still not say everything," Shayla replied, and I turned back to Kaylan. "That still doesn't explain how you know him," I said. "I first met him years ago, in a cell not unlike this one. He was caught stealing. To this day, he still frequents the Alorian prisons. You can usually find him there with his other pirate friends. I saw him not 3 fortnights ago, before I came to this wretched place." "Really? Do you know where he is?" I asked again. I can't tell you, but I can show you, he said. Let me out, and I'll show you the way. I just need my sword. Do you take us for fools? If it weren't for you, my father wouldn't be. Do not test me, Ahalaris, lest I put an arrow between your eyes. Shayla roared at him, raising her bow. I raised my hands between them, and they both fell silent. We waited to speak more, to make sure the guard didn't wake up. The guard grumbled and continued to snore from the forest floor. We aren't giving you a weapon, I spat flatly. It's not the blade I need. It's the gem, in the hilt. The black opal. It will lead us to him. Give me that and I can show you the way, he told us, and winced as he let go of the barbs. Where is it? I asked, and Shayla gripped onto my shoulder. You can't really be considering this. We can't trust him. He's a Lorien, she whispered urgently into my ear. I don't trust him, but it's not because of what he is. I don't trust him because of what I've seen him do. Awake and asleep, this man plagues my mind, but still, he knows something. I can feel it, I told her, and she lowered her bow. Unihi, Shayla muttered, and the vine bars pulled apart. Kaylan weakly got to his feet and climbed through. He stretched with relief until the vines from the bars wrapped around his wrists behind his back. Shayla held on to the other end of the vines, but Kaylan still looked happy to be out of the cell. Lead the way, she demanded. We trudged along in a line through the forest until we saw a tree with a small hut built into its branches. It was a watchtower. There were 2 Fey guards inside it. They're the ones that took out Morov when he tried to escape 3 days ago, Kaylan grimaced with a shudder. Something silver gleamed from inside the watchtower. The sword was strapped to one of the guards. What do we do? I whispered to Shayla, and she handed me the vine holding Kaylan. Stay here and don't let him out of your sight, she said, and she snuck to the other side of the tree. She held her hands to her lips and made a hooting call. The guards in the watchtower returned the call, and she walked openly towards the watchtower so the guards could see her. They waved to each other, and she climbed up into the tree to meet them. They spoke for a few minutes, and Kaylan just stared out anxiously at the tower. He was truly different from the person I'd met before. He was so pompous and confident in my visions, but here and now he was terrified. His once handsome princely face was hidden beneath a week's worth of filth and grime, and his silver hair was matted brown with mud. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Shayla returned about 10 minutes later, and we slipped away from the watchtower. We went into a different part of the forest, further south. Once we were sure no one else was around, we stopped. Kaylan was coughing and choking, so I unbound his hands and summoned some healing water for him to drink. I wasn't as adept as Nick was with water magic, but Kaylan appreciated the kindness. Shayla cocked her eyebrows at me in protest, but I didn't see any harm in healing him. He was already traumatized. The carrot would be better than the stick. Shayla pulled out the black opal, which filled the palm of her hand. It was a beautiful black stone, with large, deep azure blue flecks in it. It glowed the faintest dark blue when Kaylan touched it, and Shayla pulled it back away from him. You're going to have to trust me a little. Keep an arrow on me if you must, he said, holding his hands up. Shayla slowly handed him the gemstone and pulled out an arrow from her quiver immediately after. Kaylan held the stone, chanting something under his breath. I felt the presence of magic, but unlike the magic we usually channeled, the feeling was ice cold. It sent a chill down my spine, and I involuntarily shuddered. A shadow stretched out from under us, making both Shayla and me flinch. It formed a map on the ground, showing the lands with their names. The Rishmar Mountains were to the far north. The sea-coast to the east, Aloria was to the south, and in the far southeast blinked a warm orange light. He's in Magmaros, with the worst of scum and villainy, except perhaps Sylph Atoll. Hard to say which is worse, he informed us finally. I don't know why you would associate yourself with the likes of him. If we wanted scum and villainy, we look no further than you, Shayla scoffed coolly. He's my kid brother, I retorted. Blue eyes, he noted, staring straight at mine until I looked away. I have one last question. Why are you doing this? Every time you destroy a guardian barrier, you spread the Umbra corruption. Surely you can see that people are suffering from it. At this rate, no one will be able to use magic anymore, I argued angrily, and to my shock, Kaylan smirked. That is exactly why. To stop people from using magic. Where do you think the Umbra come from? They are corrupted mages. Magic has been tainted ever since Queen Estelle, my mother, died. She was the only one who could purify it. By taking over the magic origins, we can use our shadow magic to control the current Umbra, and prevent people from changing into Umbra by taking away all magic. It's the only way to stop what happened in Aloria from happening to the rest of Lemora. You think we're villains, but we're trying to save you, he said, pounding his fist into the ground with frustration. That would give you Alorians all the power. You would be the only ones with magic, while the rest of the world are slaves to your Umbra, Shayla spat, disgusted. For the first time, Kaylan looked lost for words, and looked away from us. My father, King Draken, believes it's our best chance to save Lemora. As Crown Prince, it's my duty to do as he sees fit, he explained solemnly. You're wrong. The Guardians are going to find a way to end the corruption. And just how do you plan to do that? He scoffed. I'm not sure yet, but if there was a cure before, we can do it again. The Guardians have always protected Lemora. I read all about it in my mother's journals. And where were the Guardians on the day Aloria fell? My kingdom is but a shadow of its former self, and all because of the Guardians' mistakes. The people have lost faith in them. Most Guardians are either old, corrupted, or dead. We can't keep relying on the relics of the past. If we are to survive, we must stop all magic use, Kaylan yelled angrily. I'm a Guardian now, and I'm going to prove you wrong. I crossed my arms, and we scowled at each other. The sun is starting to rise. We need to return him to the cell before they notice he's gone, Shayla alerted us, pointing at the horizon. No, don't take me back. I helped you. Please, let me go, he cried desperately. We can't do that, Shayla said, keeping her bow on him. I'm sorry, I whispered, placing my hand on his head. Sleep. Hi everyone, it's Ella. Thanks so much for watching the latest episode of Journey to Lemora. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, like, and share the video. It really helps. And thanks so much to all the new subscribers. I really appreciate it. I will be uploading a new episode every other week, so please stay tuned for the next episode.